everyone, I'm Lauren and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm doing something that I don't think I've ever showcased on this channel before, but because of the channels that I've recently been watching, I have been really into the wrap-up videos of what people have been reading, so here's mine for April. I want to put a disclaimer in that I did only decide to do this about a week and a half ago, so that does mean that I've not read that many books. I have kind of been in a bit of a reading slump. I've not really been reading a lot, mainly from work and not having a lot of free time, but I have been trying to increase that. So I will just go quickly through the books that I have read through this month, and it's not a lot. So the first book that I read this month was Successful Brand Management. I picked this up from my local library and I was trying to use it to streamline and brand my blog and YouTube a little bit. However, this seems to be mainly focused towards companies that have already got a body of people. It goes on about getting buy-in from managing directors and employees, so although it would be useful for someone who has got a business that they're trying to streamline into one brand, for someone with a blog and you're working just on your own, a lot of the advice in here does seem to be quite, what's the word? It does seem to be quite over the top. I did think that there were some bits of important information within this book, such as defining what your brand is, getting a brand message, your vision board sort of thing, mission statements, values, even a logo and colours that you wanted people to identify with your brand. That information I did find really useful and I have taken quite a few notes from it, but I did think that overall that this wasn't really something that was aimed at someone like me. Because of that, I have only given this a 3-star rating on Goodreads, mainly because the information in it is useful, but it just wasn't that useful for me. The next book that I read this month was Rule 1 Investing by Phil Towns. Phil Towns is I would say a successful investor, and this is a book about how he invests in the stock market. It's more of a strategy and how to invest rather than what you should invest in. It's based on only investing in companies that you think are important to yourself, and also making sure that with the financial information available that you're getting the company at a good value, really. My other half has been investing for the past couple of years and he used this book and he said that it was one of the things that really helped him to understand the mindset of it, and he's been trying to get me to invest as well for a while, so I thought I'd give this book a read, see if it makes any sense and if it's worth trying to dip my own toes into it. I've not actually used any of the strategies in here yet. I've been wanting to make sure that any companies that I do find are ones that mean a lot to me and ones that I can actually invest in if that is a possibility. If you are wanting to look into stock markets, I do think this is a good book, even if it just gives you a bit of a background information into it. Phil also has a website and he also has a YouTube channel and a podcast with his daughter, so I'll leave links to those all in the description below if they are something that you do think would be interesting. It doesn't just go on about investing, it goes about the total financial and economic state, mainly of America, but it does give a sort of a worldwide view as well. The idea behind this book is that once you've understood it and you've got the companies that you want to invest in, it should only take you 15 minutes a week to be able to see a good amount of return. However, it is important to note that with any investing strategy there is always risk, so if it is something you want to do, make sure that it's with money that you know you can lose and also money that you don't need for anything in the sort of short-term foreseeable future. I did think it was a really good book. I can't remember what rating I give it, so I'm just gonna have a quick look on my Goodreads. I did give this book a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads because I thought the information in it is really useful and I thought it would give anyone the chance to sort of dip their toes into the stock market, even if it's only with a small amount of money. So the last book that I read throughout April was Daughters of the Grail by Elizabeth Chadwick. I am a huge medieval history fan. Although I have always liked it, it did stem from historical fiction, a different author, but I will leave a link to some of her books below that I really love, and I've always been picking these up. This one I picked up from a charity shop I think 6 years ago, so I'm not very good at getting through the books that I buy, but I thought now I've got some spare time, I'll get through them. This one does have quite a lot more fiction in than what I'm used to. So for example, the main characters are people who probably do not exist and have not existed. I have done a little bit of research into one of the protagonists of this book. He was meant to be a minor lord in the Southern France region within the 1200s, but I can't actually find any information about him, so I feel like this is also potentially a lordship and person who did not exist. I would need to look into more bibliographies. So even in the bibliography for this book, it doesn't mention this guy, so I do feel like the main protagonists of this story are fictionalized, whereas the actual events and the backdrops to it are the history part. And so this story follows the Cathar persecution in southern France during the 1200s. It's known as one of the Crusades. Pope Innocent III requested that the Cathars in France were driven out. Although they are a branch of Christianity, they don't have the same ideals as Roman Catholics, and as we have seen throughout history, Roman Catholics do not like it if you tend to go against how they preach. So this follows the Crusades of Simon de Montfort through south of France. He was a small Parisian baron who... I say small Parisian baron. He was a Parisian baron who was given the task of pretty much manning the campaign and leading it through the south of France. He eventually ended up with the Countship of Toulouse and also the Duke of, I think it was Narbonne. I would need to check. There's some history books again for that. During this time he's able to root out quite a lot of the Cathars. However, he is the main villain of the story, as the Daughters of the Grail, as the name of the book suggests, are two female characters, the first being Bridget and then later on her daughter Magda. The story behind this is that Bridget and Magda and that family line are all descended from the Virgin Mary through the blood of Mary Magdalene, who was the husband of Joseph, I think that's right, Jesus' brother. However, not only are they descendants from this, and they've managed to find historical writings that have been transcribed into the region's French, they also are able to perform minor miracles. It does tend to delve into sort of a more fantastical approach as well. With these miracles comes the ability to conjure fire, warm themselves through controlling this sort of fire, and also healing. They also have the abilities to see auras and also affect dreams and the sort of the plane between the living and the dead. Usually I don't like historical fiction that does branch into this fantasy sort of style. One author in particular who does that, who I dislike, is Philippa Gregory. Her book The White Queen, I think it is, tends to give a more mystical approach and uses witches and magic to progress the story points along, but that's actually affecting real life events. Whereas this book, the storyline and the sort of fantastical miracle healing stuff is only affecting the characters specifically in this book. It doesn't seem to branch out further than that, and it doesn't seem to affect the course of history too much in that sense. I have only given this book a 4 out of 5 stars on Goodreads, and I think that's more for my own selfishness. The timeline within this book spans from 1207 I think it is till about 1240 something, 1250 something, so it is a decent chunk of history. However, there's only 400 pages here, so the amount of information contained within this book is quite minimal compared to the sort of time period it reflects. Usually the sort of historical fiction I go into covers a wide expanse of time, but also there's a wide expanse of pages to cover that as well, so it goes into a bit more detail and gets down into the sort of nitty gritty of it. I feel like the second act of this book, I say the second act, the sort of final third of it, maybe a bit more, was a bit rushed. So it moves from Bridget's life and that sort of era, moves down into the next generations, and honestly that section does feel rushed and that there's not as much detail given to it, and I do wish that the detail had been there. I feel like it would have just brought the story to life a little bit more. However, I did really enjoy this book and I would really recommend this to anyone who does like historical fiction. For me, I think the most interesting part was learning about the Cathar persecution. I have read quite a lot around this sort of time period from about 150 years before and about 100 years afterwards, and I have never come across this, at least I can't remember having come across this sort of persecution. So what it's done for me is given me a whole new branch of history to look into and to try and understand and just get my teeth into it, and honestly One of the reasons why I love this book so much is that it's given me something else to learn. I did also really like Elizabeth's writing style. I feel like it captures the quintessential style of the time. I think it does reflect well on the characters. It shows the detail, the emotion. I just really loved it, and I do have a couple more books by her that I've not read, so I am really looking forward now to getting into those as well. So those are the 3 books that I managed to finish in April. I am hoping to have read a couple more for May, because I do actually kind of like this and doing mini reviews of books, so I think I'm going to try and keep this up. I've not got a complete reading list for May, so I'm just going to show 2 books that I have decided that I want to get through, just so that I can either keep them or get rid of them, although saying that, one of them I have recently bought. The first book that I want to read and finish in May is The Artstone Odyssey by Arvind Kumar. This book I actually read at primary school a couple of times, and I really enjoyed it. Whilst I was watching Wanda Ness's video the other day about her wrap up, I can't remember which one it was, but she mentioned Shantaram and how it depicted people in Mumbai, and I remembered about this book that I really enjoyed as a child, and I looked into it and I managed to find a really cheap copy online. I am actually really excited to have this. I think I read it 3 times at primary school, and it's not a long book, but I do remember it being a bit bigger. Clearly as a child this was a bit of a tough slog to get through, so I'm kind of hoping that it still lives up to my expectations, and I'm wanting to give it a good read. Pretty much it follows the girl, I think she's called Chandra. It follows the protagonist Chandra, who is I think she's Hindu, and about this heartstone, and it's an odyssey to take it back to where it needs to be. And I remember there's a church and mice that she starts speaking to. It has got quite a fantastical element to it, and I am really looking forward to reading this again. The next book that I'm wanting to read is a bit of a curveball for me. It's not something that I usually read, it's not a genre that I usually read, and that is Russell Brand's My Bookie Wug. I know I'm really late to this bandwagon. This is something that my other half picked up at a car boot or charity shop a few years ago. He's never read it, and he was actually thinking of getting rid of it recently. However, I do actually really like Russell Brand, and I've been wanting to read it. I'd not read it because I was waiting for him to read it, because I didn't want him to start reading it whilst I was halfway through it. But because he's not bothered, I am going to be reading through this. I don't really know what it has in it, apart from it's an autobiography style book. A memoir, I suppose, in a way. But I am really looking forward to this, and I think it'll be a good read. It doesn't look too long. The typeset, I don't know if you can see it, is quite reasonable size, so I'm hoping that it should be quite a quick read as well. Those are the books that I finished in April, and 2 of the books that I want to read in May. I think I counted my small bookshelf the other day, and I had about 16 books on there that I'd not read, and from my other bookshelf I've probably got another 20, if not more, and then I've got a box that I've not actually unpacked from when I moved in, and I dread to think how many books are in there as well. So I am working through pretty much all the books that I've got on my TBR. I have so many on my Kindle that I need to get through as well, so I am hoping to have a decent chunk finished before the end of this summer. My Goodreads challenge for the year is at 50 books, and so far I've only logged 6 on there. I am really bad at logging books on Goodreads, so I'm hoping that these sort of wrap-ups will also help me to actually log the books that I'm reading onto my Goodreads account. If I actually log all my books, I might actually surpass my challenge target for a change. I will leave links to all of the books that I've mentioned in this video down below. If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a like, and if you want to see more of my videos, don't forget to hit subscribe. There are new videos up every single Sunday. I hope you're all well, and see you soon. Bye!